Hello and welcome everyone, and surprise! We're starting a little early. Only because, I got mom life too and I got to go pick up kids. So, anyway, we started live. Surprise, surprise, surprise. Let's go ahead and get this thing punched out so we can visit with TK Thompson.
I'm April Tribe Juke. Welcome to the Beacon of Light podcast. I believe we are all made with light, and light is hope. This podcast brings authors who write stories of hope to all of you. Your journey to be inspired and amplified by these stories starts now.
And we're back. And yes, we're early, and that's okay. All right. So we want to welcome our amazing guest, Miss T.K. Thompson. And let me tell you, we have met in a different place at a different time in this amazing, crazy world. So TK, Tamara, we met down in Texas, and she was like, I'm an author. And I was like, oh my gosh. And, so then me, as I am, I'm like snooping through and I'm like, oh, like she's like for real, like an author. She's just writing like crazy. So you'll see running down here on the ticker tonight, we've got one that's called A New Recruit. And she has a whole series, and this woman is amazing. Yeah, look at her. See, she's got it. And see that little sparkly, silvery, just like wow gem. There you go. Yeah, she's like, she's really good. All right, y'all. So we were going to talk about this. And so, Tamara, tell us all about you and tell us a little bit about yourself and how we got started into the whole writing business. Like, what's up?
Oh my goodness. Well, I grew up in little mining towns in between Arizona and New Mexico, and I would like to say that I was a creative child, but that wasn't really like a traditional path for in my culture or family or whatever. And so I really didn't start actually writing until I was around 30 years of age and pregnant and in college. I remember telling my husband, I'm like, oh, I've got this story that just won't leave my mind. And so I think I'm going to write it. And he did like oh, you're going to write, and I was like, kind of, okay. And so I started pounding out this story because it was so intense inside of me. And then I remember coming back and reading it to him, and I could tell he was like all geared up to be like supportive, but at the same time, if I wasn't very good, to tell me that I wasn't very good. And I remember reading what material I had, and he was just like, you wrote this? And I was like, yeah. And he was like, oh my gosh, babe, this is so good. You really can write. And I'm like, so you didn't believe me before? You didn't think that I could write? And he was like, well, I didn't really know what to do or think. And so I just started writing this story, and it took me about 4 years to write the first one, the one that won an award. My first two have actually won awards. And so I thought of just putting all the rest of them in and competing against myself instead of waiting every year. But anyway, so it's been kind of like a crazy whirlwind of writing and winning awards and going to different book festivals. And there was quite a large, hill for me to tackle when it came to actually seeing myself as an author, believing in myself, and really even me giving myself that label. So that's kind of been my journey of being an author.
Amazing. I love the surprise on your husband. Like, whoa. That's one of those like, hey, what am I? Job to live? Come on. I mean, right? That
Right.
moment. But so exciting. And so tell us a little bit about your genre and what it is you write.
So my genre, I have a fantasy epic adventure, a strong female lead with pirate adventures in it, and it follows a young woman who we'll say has a very large redemption story to be told. And yeah, she's
So
fun.
is this the first one? A New Recruit. Is this the name of the first book? Right?
Yes. It is
Okay,
the name.
so there you go, Miss Jill. This is the name of the first book, A New Recruit.
Right. It is the first book, and I love it because every single book is so different. Um, it's weird how they take on this whole difference between all of them. The first one really is this epic adventure where you are just sucked into the mystery of this woman and how she is, why she is. And you see her through this new recruit at times in the story. And she, lots of suspense, lots of like, you don't know what's going on or how the story is going to happen. And that's one thing I really love about this book is everyone who reads it, I'm always like, okay, did you expect the ending? And it's always a resounding no. And so I always like give myself a little props because I'm like, oh my gosh, you were able to write a book that people were super surprised at the ending. And so the first one really does just capture epic adventure. And I love that. I love it that it's just this huge hook for adventure. And then the second one is almost like a huge drama. And so you get a lot of feedback. And so they fight for attention, those first two, which is why I think they both won awards. Um, but yeah, if you
Wow.
like fantasy,
Cool.
yeah.
In the story of redemption,
Mhm.
I would guess that it probably has some type of faith-based understanding that the characters are gonna go through, and how that comes about obviously would be shown through different types of journeys that this character is gonna go through. So in writing like this with a fantasy and idea, you said you had the story within you, right? And did it come from influence from different people that you've met in your life? Was it just this idea one day you wake up and there it all is? Like, how did it come about?
Well, I would say it started with me dreaming specifically about this character, and she did mirror some of my life. So, like, she has three sisters. I have three sisters, you know. Not all of it is completely accurate when it comes to personality and things like that, but there are definitely highs and lows in there that I would say reflect my own life journey that I've had, because I feel like everything that we write or and you know ends up coming up as some type of a mirror of what we've either consumed or experienced, just told in our own words, in our own imagination, in our own way. And so, I definitely have this belief that we all have a redemption story, and it's very unique and individual to each and every single one of us. And so, through the whole series, you see kind of different phases of her life and the journey that she's on to even come to terms that she's on a redemption road, you know? So, yeah.
Oh, incredible. So the award that you won, what is this award called?
It's a reader's favorite 5-star seal. So, I it was that's one of my things too is I really couldn't believe in myself. I had a ton of people tell me, "You're really good at this. You should keep going." And I just couldn't believe them because I was like, "Well, I know you or I've paid you." You know what I mean? And so I had like 3 editors, I've had 2 critique groups, all telling me that this was something that I should keep doing, and I needed something different, and so I sent it out to a third party, contest award, and I was like, "Okay, these people are gonna tell me the truth." And then I won this 5-star seal, and it was like the first time in probably like 6 years of doing this that I kinda took a breath, and I was like, okay, maybe you're not wasting your time. You can tell a story. And so that's something I really like to focus on when I talk to other people who are interested in some type of success. Um, that sometimes the greatest challenge you have is believing in yourself. So, and that mindset comes from a lot of different places. It can come from your your culture, of your family, of your orientation, your current family and friends. Maybe you weren't supported well enough. You can have insecurities, low self-esteem. Um, Maybe you don't even just know how to believe in yourself. Uh, or sometimes we're blocked by pain and trauma and depression, and all those things can be hard to overcome. But whatever it is, it's an umbrella that covers all of us at some time in some form, and it's completely conquerable, I would say.
I agree. I agree. There is that moment, and for yourself, you had to kind of go to that third party, right? Where you've
Right.
got your loved ones, you got your friends and family, you've got people who you know or who you paid that were like, no, really, no, 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 really, and you're like, okay, so where's the stranger? You. Let me see. What do you think? That's so your attitude. I love it. It's just so you. It's so you. But I mean, it's true. When those awards come back, and you had that change, did you feel maybe more stories start to come out because you had that first one? Had you already started writing the second one
No,
before?
I probably had 3 books
Wow.
before I had sent it in. And so, um, yeah, I'm pretty stubborn, I would say. Uh, but I think a lot of it was my emotional intelligence needed to develop a little bit more. I needed to um, see things clearer, see myself clearer, stop putting judgments on myself just because I didn't have an English degree, or like there were these bullet points that I felt like I had to have in order to be a legitimate author. And then I don't know, part of me was a little embarrassed too to throw out oh, you're 30 some odd years old and you write fantasy. You're a fantasy author. That's so geeky of you. And so it was kind of a role I had to just finally just shrug off and be like, yeah, I write about dragons and pirates and anything else that my brain decides to make up. So here it is. You know what I mean?
I think it's awesome. And so how many now are within the series? How many books?
Right now I have 6. So I have four big books and 2 little novellas. And those novellas just came along because I had a character that I fell in love with, and I'm like, oh my goodness, you need your own story. And so I have 2 little novellas that will take characters out and do like an intimate role story on them.
So, like, the whole Star Wars thing. Let's talk about Han Solo now, and let's talk about this character. Right? So you're pulling out all these characters. I'm waiting for the Wookiee one, right? I mean, come
Right. That is true. We need a Wookiee one.
on, get a Wookiee.
I
Come on.
like Wookiees. They
So
speak our
that's
language.
incredible. I think that's such an awesome thing to know that when a story is started and one character pops up and you are like, okay, please hold. What? Just simmer down. Just a minute. Let me finish this thing, and then out it comes. Right? There's just something about character writing that just captures us, and so as people have been reading this book, and what do they tell you? Not necessarily about the fantasy part of things, but do they mention anything like I could see myself in this character, or oh my gosh, that's just like my bigger sister, or what have people expressed back to you about this series?
One thing, because I like to go and read the reviews a lot, I always feel extremely humbled when I read the reviews. They shock me every time, even though I feel like they say the same things. But one of them is that they really feel like the story has very well developed characters. And I think any part of a story needs to have like these intense characters. And I have spent a lot of time developing them in my brain, which is why I feel like it's so easy for me to write these books, because they literally have become almost like real people to me. I know how they'll respond in any given time or circumstance. And so there's so many too. I juggle quite a few characters in the book that I feel like they just each is so unique. I just love each and every single one of them. And that's one of the comments I feel like I've gotten um, on all my reviews on Amazon is how much they really like the characters.
I think that's really a powerful part of all storytelling, because if you can't connect to who it is you're reading about, um, it doesn't have staying power, right?
Right.
It has that flash and forgot, and then it's like, oh yeah, I remember. Oh, maybe I don't. I can't remember. So that you want the impact, right? You want to have that connection, and we know why many books have that impact upon us, especially in that fantasy world. So many times we think of like self improvement, self development, all of these things, and we kind of put fantasy over here, like that really can't help us. So I'm going to do all these self help books, but I'm going to escape and go here and read this. But
Right.
what we really find is when we are reading the escape, we see more about our family, our lives, ourselves, our spouses within the characters, right? And we're like, okay, so please hold for a second, Dragon Lady. I'm gonna come back over here and I gotta get my self help going again because, oh, wait, okay, pause. I gotta go back here and find out what happened next. And so it's this whole kind of interesting part. But when we fall into story changes lives. I
Right.
mean, I have a belief in a really amazing storyteller, and they were kind of captured in a really old book that a lot of people read. It's kind of common around the world and has like an Old Testament feel to it, sometimes a New Testament feel to it, or something like that. And he shared a lot of stories within that, and the characters connecting there helped to impact my own life. And I find myself like, I mean, when I am reading these types of books, I don't know. I fall into it and I want to know more, and I see different characteristics within myself or within somebody who I know, and you just want to know what happens. And in that, in the wanting to know what happens, and when it's all mystery and the end totally shifts you, you're like, uh, was anyone ever upset by the ending that they've given you any feedback with?
No, actually, I don't think anyone has been upset with the ending yet so far that has complained. I agree with you that there has to be powerful emotional experiences inside of a book that people can relate to. Um, it can't just be all high fantasy. The characters actually have to be relatable, like you said. And while my book is fiction, um, this epic adventure just takes this main character, you know, you experience childhood trauma, youthful indiscretion, adult disassociations, um, complete mindlessness, crushed dreams, crushed hopes, and a serious lack of emotional energy, which I feel like kind of sums up the human experience. And she is very deep and relatable. Um,
And what is her name? What is your character's
it,
name?
it's Acantha is her name. That's one thing that people have said. They're always asking, okay, how do you pronounce this guy's name? How do you pronounce this guy's name? And so I'm always going on this pronouncing um, mission with them. But yeah, her name is Acantha, and she's a pretty intense character, I would say.
Wow. And how do you come up with some of the names for your characters?
Sometimes it's just a vibe. I'll go down a list or I'll have a feeling on what letter I want. And well, like with Acantha, I kind of wanted like a Greek vibe to it. You know, I wanted her to sound old and unique. And so I thought Acantha was a very unique name. Because I don't know, my name's Tamara. And so I always felt like that was an older name and wasn't as common. So I try to kind of mimic in the same way.
Awesome. That idea of bringing in a character's name that that really, you think about it, it is different and it is unique. Do you have any characters within your books that have, uh, I'll just say plain names? Are they all very different and creative?
Yeah, I would say so. Like the new recruit, his last name is Basile, and so people are always trying to say Basil, but they call him Basile. And some of her recruits that are like her sons that are closest to her. One of them is Scar, but it's very apparent why his name is Scar. He's got quite a few. And then another is Baster, and another is Jennings. She has a sister named Jeanette who was raised in a French city, and so she is very different from Acantha in that way. So lots of interesting names and characters to try to love, because sometimes we don't love them, don't understand why they do, but the story is important for them to be that way.
Yeah, and that's something that's really interesting because I mean, there's going to be some type of villain, right? There's going to be some type of something that they're going to go through, whether it's something physical, whether it's something emotional, or a combination of all of that, because that's the relatable part of our own lives when we can see and feel and know and witness. It doesn't matter if it was a fantasy creature that evoked the emotions of that character or the situation. We feel, we empathize, we hate and we fear, right? And that's the joy of what fantasy can really bring. So in your writing and stuff, have you found a particular group of people that are just like falling into this? Is this for youth? Is this for young 20, 30-year olds? Is this what is it that who reads these books?
So I would say it's for 12 and up. I think my youngest reader was 9, but it doesn't have a lot of sex or language. It doesn't have sex or language in it, but it does have violence. It's a pirate book without any type of violence. I'm not quite kind of sure what book it would be, but I like to explain it as if Pirates of the Caribbean and Wonder Woman had a baby. Like that would be my books. And I know it's so if that resonates with you at all, press the star key or something. I don't know.
I love it. I love it. So Jean asked, what was your underlying motivation in writing these books? Thanks, Jean. Great question.
At first, it was just the dream. You know, I saw the journey of this person, and it was so captivating that I had to write it. But I really felt also, as I got into writing it, that it was quite a therapy for me because I had been through a lot of those that list of things that I mentioned earlier, a lot of childhood trauma, and this redemptive story was kind of my own at the same time to reveal through another person or in this character in a way. So it did really end up kind of being my own therapy to write this book. And it happened so easily for me that it was extremely consuming. I couldn't stop it.
So what did your kids say? Did they like, oh, mom's just writing book again? I mean, because you're a mom, so spoiler alert, she's a mom. She's a mom with some great kids. And I love what Jean said. She's like, I love how this book brought healing to you. And it is an incredible journey with that. Has anyone written reviews or have commented about characters as they've gone through the books reading with you? Have they identified with something similar? Have they shared anything like that in these reviews?
Not so far as of yet. My kids were young when I wrote this book, so I mostly wrote it while I was in night school and at night while they were sleeping. And I remember when I got my first copy of it, I was so excited and I was just showing it to them because they were a bit older because it did take me 4 years to get this book done. And I remember my oldest was like, it's just a book. Like, why are you so excited? And I'm like, no, it's not just a book. These are my words. These are my words inside this book. And she's like, okay, mom. And for them, it's like nothing. They don't understand, because I feel like these types of things are a little more commonplace. It's a lot more easier to do these types of things these days than it was how I was raised, you know. And so I think I just finished reading one of my novellas to my two youngest, and it's the first time that they've experienced one of my stories from beginning to end without me just talking about a story or plot line. And so when we got done, they were like, "Oh my gosh, that was the story?" And I'm like, "Yeah." And they're like, "That was great, Mom." I'm like, "Thanks. Where's my medal?" You know what I mean? So, yeah, for them, it's super commonplace, but for me, it's wondrous that I've been
It is
able to accomplish.
I praise you. I think it's great. And because it's just this idea when you can get and fall into such characters in a place that brings people through and learning, it's just so much fun. I'm helping my little boys start to understand Narnia, right? And the whole series and reading through and I'm like, let's just go to the movies. And I'm like, hold on a second. We gotta give some background first. We gotta read. I'm more of like, let's read first, then watch movie. Kind of an idea. But it's so fun to see they're like, "Oh, this is just like and that's just like" and so to watch them start to experience and connections, I'm like, interesting." And then I love to say, "Tell me more about that. Why do you think that?" And they just blah, 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 and it's so interesting, and it gives us a really great common ground for something more to talk about other than, how was school? What did you do today, right? So kind of thinking about that. And then my youngest 7-year-old, he'll be like, that's like so and so in such and such a place who did this and that and that. And I'm like, you are my son. Like, yay! So it is fun to see how they can like that. So, with our short time left, what is it that you would like to share with the world about your books or a message that you have that is that beacon of light to so many people?
I feel like I've had a lot of people come to me and ask me, how do I become an author? How do I tackle this success, whatever it is? Uh, and a lot of the time, I tell them, focus on 1% of what you can do for that goal every single day. Because most of the time, the obstacle is ourselves. And how you overcome that is you stop looking at a big picture and you just create small steps to get there. Um, I had, oh, sorry, my phone alarm went off. We were supposed to start. But because I had a high school student shadow me recently, and I was super worried that she was going to be bored sitting there watching me type and watch movies or listen to music or whatever I was doing that day. And so I made her do a writing prompt with me in a little sprint. And we got done, and I just gave her like a few just top of the pile hints of how to write a good first paragraph of the book. And so I pushed the timer, and we were both rattling, the keys were rattling, and the timer went off, and I was like, okay, well, let's read them to each other. And she couldn't read her paragraph, and I totally understand, because there is this level of vulnerability that you have to face um, when you are trying to work towards a goal or a dream, and eventually it'll have to be something that you overcome. And so I said, okay, I'll go first, and I read my paragraph to her, and then I turned to her and I waited for her to read her paragraph, and she couldn't get the words out. And I was like, okay, give me it. And so I read her paragraph out loud for both of us, and it was better than mine. like legitimately better than mine. And I had my husband come out and I read both of them to him, and he was like, oh yeah, she wins. And just this level of confidence came over her. And there's this quote that I heard recently that said, you wouldn't plant a seed and then every day go and dig it up to see if it was growing or if it was good or anything like that. Sometimes you have to put your faith in something. You have to plant that seed. You have to allow it to grow and have faith in it. And it can happen. It's journey, but it starts small. And that's all it takes is you being willing to plan it, to start small, to do something every single day, even if it's the small amount, because it'll take you to big things if it's something that you really, really want and desire.
That is a perfect place to end. Okay, y'all, start small, get that 1% in, just like Miss T.K. Thompson said, and awards will be coming. That's for sure. This is an incredibly beautiful day for you, and thank you so much. You really did empower her. Thanks so much, TK. We will see you soon. Bye, everybody. Thanks for coming.